desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Hey. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a saying. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. Water for the thirsty, yeah. I drink,
it's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You will find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst, but the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink, refreshing ink flowing out of cups. This life they gotta touch, you liberate them out of cuffs. The faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy of fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give an honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who decide to drink it
up. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Hard weekend, it left me high and dry. I've been going through the ringer. I need you in my life. Time seems crazy. I'm stranded in the desert. This life gets so hot, I need a sip of you, God. Cause you're like water when I'm thirsty, yeah. Drink, drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink, drink. Hey. It's warm down here. It's hard to breathe. It's burning my eyes, Lord. So hard to see. I'm quite parched now. I need a saying. Come quench my thirst, Lord. Because you're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink, I drink. Water for the thirsty, yeah. I drink,
it's like water for the thirsty. Truthfully, our souls parched. You will find them when you seek them with your whole heart. It's so hard to stay consistent through the word I'm reading. Cause the time is coming soon when every eye gon' see him in the clouds above. This is about a love that quenches the thirst, but the world offers is not enough. Taste and see from this fountain spring, you'll be lining up to get a drink, refreshing ink flowing out of cups. It's life they gotta touch, to liberate them out of cuffs. Their faith is undivided trust, created us up out of dust. He's worthy, a fresh well of living water for the thirsty. Give her honor the first thing that I do when I'm waking up. It's everlasting life to all who decide to drink
You're
it up.
like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
Good night. Good night, everybody, and welcome to Water for the Thirsty. We apologize for the delay. It's been raining cats and dogs out in the DMV if you're not from the DMV, and so, you know, it creates traffic and congestion, and, you know, there are just other challenges that the enemy tries to throw our way. Sharika, we might need to move in a little bit to prevent these kind of special moments from happening, right, Bradley?
Yes, sir.
And so, but we push through, and we try to make it happen anyway, because we believe God is greater than all of that.
Yes.
With us tonight, Sharika. She's now one of the fellas.
Yeah. You know, like Henrik infiltrating the fellas' day.
And Bradley, you know, who's with us every third Friday with the fellas.
Yes,
And Kenrick is on his way because he's been affected by the rain as well, but he should be here with us. We apologize again for being late, and we thank you guys for waiting for us and joining in with us in our conversation tonight. Those of you who are on, you know how we do this. We're reading, we're studying, and then we come and we inquire about the things we study, we dialogue about it, we look for application, and then we share it with each other, and then with you, and then others in our lives as we go forward. So this thing is meaningful. I'm gonna start with Sharika only because she's a lady among the fellas.
Age before
I'm
beauty.
glad. I'm glad, man.
Age before beauty. Go ahead with that.
Only because she's the special fella.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
special privileges for this guy.
Here we go. We were talking about Saul. One thing I liked about Samuel, we're in there now. We were in 1 Samuel, I believe, before when Saul died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he killed himself.
Yeah.
I want to know, like, did that bother anybody? Because I thought it was honorable. Personally, I thought it was like an honorable discharge. Like,
The way he took himself out?
yeah, I wasn't gonna let the enemy kill me either.
Right.
And so I kind of wanted to know, you know, how do we feel about that? Like,
Well, he asked his armor bearer first, but he wouldn't do it.
right.
And then when his armor bearer saw him take himself out, he just did the same thing. I was like, wow. I just, you know what? I felt like when I read that whole, because everything happened in one day. His
Right.
sons got taken out in one day. He got taken. It was just like a very sad end to a long, sad saga. That's just how I viewed it. I mean, you see his descent into madness after seeing the witch, and just coming to gradually to the realization that he's completely lost the presence of the Lord. And you know, it's disheartening, because I actually heard a sermon regarding Saul before we actually started studying it, and they were making the comparison between Saul and David in the regard to where David got anointed and he had the Lord's presence and he kept it. Saul was chosen by the Lord. He was anointed and he had the Lord's presence, but then he lost it. So I guess the parallel was, where did Saul lose it and how did David keep it?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of warnings in that sermon. But the one thing that the pastor made clear was the fact that when we put our will above his consistently, you know, and that's what Saul was doing, and he was trying to find reason enough to do it, and he was more interested in being king and the perks that came along with being king rather than having his allegiance to God. Like, for instance, one parallel he made was the fact that when David, as a boy, after he got anointed and after Samuel came out and saw the family and everything, David was called repeatedly back to Saul's courts to play music for him because he was tormented by that spirit that was messing with him all the time. He'd get into those rages. But every time David finished playing, he found time to escape the palace and go back home. He's like, why do you think that is? He's like, one might think that coming from such a humble background where there's pretty much nothing, then going to the king's court, he might see all the toys and all the temptations in the king's court and be attracted to it. But David was in a key position to see that all this wealth and all this, all these resources, like right at your fingertips, don't bring happiness and don't bring peace. And he had a passion for God, whom he grew close to just while watching the sheep. Because every time he left Saul, he went back to watch the sheep. And he did that to recenter himself because he saw God where he was. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't see that same peace in the setting that he was going to play music for Saul. So he found his way leaving, quite often. And then the pastor said that's because David had a passion for God. Saul had more passion than what kingship brought him.
But did he become that, or was he that? Was that
Saul?
Yeah. Was that who Saul was, or is that who Saul became?
He made the argument that that's who Saul was.
Because my Bible says God changed Saul's heart.
Where? Let's go to that.
I don't even know if I agree with what you just said.
Me or him?
You said.
Or Bradley?
I don't know if I agree with that.
First Samuel.
We'll get to that though.
Okay, we'll get to that.
First Samuel. It was early in the before the first rebuke. First Samuel 10. For those of you watching online, we've been reading recently stories of Samuel, Saul, and David through the books of First Samuel, First Chronicles, and Second Samuel. We've also been reading the Psalms and the Book of Mark.
Right.
Since the last time we got together. Yes.
Yes.
Right. So that's kind of where our conversation is coming from tonight. So yeah, 1 Samuel chapter 10. Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon you, verse 10. 6, verse 6. 1 Samuel 10:6. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Alright? And then later on, verse 9, as Samuel turned to leave, God changed Saul's heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. So did Saul become hung up with the king's stuff, or was he always that?
If he got changed too, because it's saying, okay, the Spirit of the Lord came upon you, you will prophesy, you be turned into another man. If he was like changed in order so that God could do what he wanted to do through him.
Correct.
But originally that wasn't him. If he had to be changed.
Correct.
Right. So.
But then he had to change back if that's the case.
Yeah, he would have to have now gone in a different direction,
right,
away from the direction that God changed him from.
So we don't know if he made a 360 or if he just made a 90. But
a 180.
180.
Oh yeah, sorry. A 180 or a 90. We don't know what he did. Because he was one way.
Right.
Changed completely.
What was that original way?
That's what we don't know.
He was reluctant. The Bible describes him as being reluctant.
But reluctant doesn't mean that he was obsessed with kingship.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
he didn't want to do it at first.
Right. So we just know he was him.
Right. Yes, he was just whoever he was. He
I'm,
thought little of himself. He was
I'm
reluctant.
not ready for this.
The points and the perks of the kingship came along with how he was going to rule, how many alliances he could make. Case in point, when he was sent to destroy that whole I can't remember the name of that group of people he was supposed to destroy, but by saving the king, he was like, this is an honor amongst kings, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna hook you up, I'm gonna let you slide, and then in the future, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna benefit off the back end. And Samuel came through and said, what are you doing? You're supposed to take everybody out, and he didn't do it. That's because he was like, well, he started making excuses then and there. So that's why I say he got He didn't want to do it at first, right? Because I remember in their verse, the scripture said he ran and hid and cried based off the weight of the.
I know he cried, but he was hiding in baggage.
He was hiding. That's right. He was behind the cry.
He was hiding
He
in
put all
baggage.
that on Saul, man. But after he became, I guess he got comfortable in it. I'm trying to think of it like in practical terms of how maybe I would look at it if I was in his position. I'm like, okay, well, I'm here. Let me see what's the best I can do. And being that he was handsome, he was tall, and he was he was the chosen, he was the people's choice. That played into his ego and I guess his demeanor and how he carried his kingship.
Was he the people's choice?
That he's the one that. That's good. I knew you were gonna say it. I think we've had this discussion before too. Was he the people's choice, or did God choose him out of that? Because the people wanted a king, and then God chose. It's like, okay, yeah.
You know what I think? I don't think he got lost in the kingship.
Where do you get lost?
I think he got lost in the strategy.
Explain.
Remember, the people wanted a king because they've seen other kings.
Right.
And what kings do.
Uh-huh.
I set up alliances. I have, enemies and whatever. So now Saul's realizing, hey, I actually have I got a country. I got a people behind me here.
Right.
So this must be an honor amongst kings. Let me hold on to this. I'm gonna get an alliance here, and then I'm gonna try to get another alliance there. And the strategy behind building what he thinks is his.
Okay.
As far as the kingdom I now have.
Right.
Not what comes with it. It's just I'm trying to build these people up because what the people want is not just a king. Mm-hmm. They want a kingdom. They want an establishment. And I believe, based on what I've seen,
mm-hmm.
because he's still one of them that wants a king,
mm-hmm.
this is what it is. This is the route of what I've seen the kings do.
Okay. Everything you just said, I agree with, and I would classify that as being under kingship.
Well, see, when I think of under kingship, it's more like the riches, the palace, the this, the that. I think you could have taken that from Saul, but he was more so thinking like, I'm trying to establish Saul the Great.
Wow.
The kingdom.
The legacy of Saul.
Right. I have established what the kingdom is. Mm-hmm. Pass this on to Jonathan, maybe, whatever. But I will long live the establishment of this.
I would take that and carry it a step further and say he became autonomous, and instead of being a steward of the kingdom, he tried to become the king. Because God had intended to be king. And he says that when they asked for a king, he said, no, they didn't reject you, Samuel. They rejected me as king. Mm-hmm. And he said, tell them what will happen when you make someone a king. Mm-hmm. They will try to be autonomous like the other kings.
Yeah, they will.
And they will take over you. And here's what it looks like. Enter Saul. Mm. Now, if Saul had continued to stay a steward, subject to the king, he would have been in a better position to rule and lead and guide. Right. But he started to say, well, yeah, I know God said wait, but I'm assessing the situation, and these fellas, we need to sacrifice now, or else we're going to lose these people.
Yeah.
The strategy of it all.
So now I have to make an autonomous decision because I am the king.
Gotcha.
And when I said I disagreed with the difference between Saul and David's behavior didn't always reflect his relationship with God. And from the outside, you probably weren't sure of David's relationship with God.
Oh yeah.
And so because we have some background and we can hear the mourning and the cry, that nobody cried like David. Did you know the connection? As a people, Saul and David aren't very different.
Externally, yeah.
They're not very different. It's just
David ain't tall. That's about it.
David ain't tall, right? And so it's like we can't.
He was ruddy
and short. Yeah.
If you're looking for an example of a king, they look the same.
Mm-hmm. Almost. From a distance, they look the same.
As a regular member of this, I don't even want to call them kingdom or whatever, just township. They look the same without the extra information that we have. Mm-hmm. David just cried about it a lot. And he knew when he fell and he bumped his head, Mommy, Daddy, and he'd run back. Like, I hit my head. I realized I hit my head. So I was like, scratch
Alright.
yourself real quick. I'm good. Like,
Alright, yeah.
right, I'm good. You know.
So last week, I was trying to save this for the next time I see Z because this is really for her. But last week, it's only because you brought it up that I'm trying to plug it in here. Z was saying she was wondering. Been reading the story of Saul, she often wondered if she would ever get to that point where she would reach out to God and God wouldn't respond. Because Saul ended up going to the witch because he inquired of God
And God didn't answer.
and God didn't
That's a
answer.
serious question.
And so she was wondering, could I? Because it looks, the way the story is told, it looks like Saul did two things and God went and yanked, the spirit from Saul,
Yeah.
left him and abandoned him. And so she was kind of concerned about that for herself. And we were trying to argue the case that once you have life, there's hope. And Saul kind of had a chance, even up until he was dead, to do something different. But then there were some people who were arguing that, once the spirit leaves you, then there's nothing you can do to come back because it's the spirit that draws you back anyway. And I went and I looked up that king Manasseh. And I found something interesting about Manasseh that helped me understand Saul a little bit better. And if we could turn very quickly to the see, I put it here. Follow up with Z on Saul and Manasseh contrast. 2 Chronicles 33. I know we'll get to this later on, and I guess you can read it in context later on, but I just thought about him. 2 Chronicles 33.
Was Manasseh a good one or a bad one?
So we'll see.
I know they jump back and
Perspective.
First Chronicles 33. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's go from
Perspective.
9.
forth. Nah, okay.
Let's go from 9. But Manasseh led Judah and the people of Jerusalem astray, so that they did more evil than the nations the Lord destroyed before the Israelites. The Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they paid no attention. So the Lord brought against them the army commanders of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh prisoner, put a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. In his distress, he sought favor from the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his ancestors. And when he prayed to him, the Lord was moved by his entreaty and listened to his plea. So he brought him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord is God. If you go back up to the beginning of the chapter, it introduced Manasseh as the worst king ever.
Perspective.
To that point.
Manasseh was he was bad.
It's bad.
Manasseh was bad.
No, but he was like worse than
Jeroboam
all
and
before.
every-
All
yeah.
before he was.
So he was the last one who was marked bad. Okay, I got you.
of all who was my
Yeah. Because when they go back and forth through the Kings and the Chronicles, towards the end of the chapter, they'll say this one caused Israel to sin far more than every other king before him. So he's the new worst. So it has to be Manasseh then.
Yeah, he reigned for 55 years.
That's a long time to be wicked and ruling, man.
Right, but
Well, not the whole time. When he repented, he
So
got
he-
some more
okay.
power back.
he reigned total of 55 years.
Yeah. The first 12, he kind of went bad.
That seems to be the case.
But what I saw that stood out to me
Uh-huh.
was the verse 13, verse 12 and 13. In his distress,
He prayed.
he sought the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the Lord, the God of his ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
What we see of Saul before he goes to see the witch of Endor is that he was only asking God to help him make a decision.
He wasn't humbling himself greatly.
No,
I need a strategy move, bruh. Talk to me about my strategy.
he never humbled himself.
I didn't ask you your opinion. I'm asking you which one of my choices is the best one.
And so I'm saying, as long as we are alive, we have the option to humble ourselves. And what this story about Manasseh is showing, that in contrast to Saul, is when we humble ourselves, it doesn't matter how bad we are, God is waiting and willing to come back and restore when we put ourselves in a position of humility, which is the contrast that the writer of Samuel makes between Saul and David.
Well, I've always struggled when people say the spirit leaves you. Because a lot of people feel as if, one, I never understood it. And two, they say it with such permanence. Like,
That's it.
that's it. But Satanists and atheists and well-pronounced, I'm messing with this team, ists, wake up one day or have some sort of interaction, like, you know what, just maybe, let me listen to this. And so if in my opinion, a lukewarm
Good night,
Christian,
Keisha.
if a lukewarm Christian is in this valley of indecision, you can't convince me. Now it's convince who you want. You can't convince me that the Spirit has left them permanently and went to a Satanist and was like, "Oh, son." Like, you know, like, it's just, it doesn't make, maybe you're, I always wonder if my ears just aren't tuned to it. Like, so for example, it's like beating. As a kid, the more you beat me, I kind of get used to it, and I rationalize the beating and realize this doesn't work anymore. And so maybe as I continue to do negatively or whatever, and even in Saul's case, I don't believe this is the first time he's probably asked God for a strategy or an opinion on his strategy, and God didn't answer him or whatever. And so he got to the point, you know, forget it. I know that I can get an answer from somewhere.
He wasn't about trying to submit to God. He was about trying to do what he wanted, and he was going to do what he wanted no matter where it took him, which is why he ended up by the witch.
Right.
But not only that, when I do what I want, no matter where it takes me, I don't admit to the fault.
Correct.
And David and Manasseh in these cases admitted to the fault.
Right.
Yo.
Let's jump down to verse,
You know?
let's jump down to verse 21 to agree with what you're saying,
Okay.
because it goes to Manasseh's son, and it says, Ammon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 2 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as his father Manasseh has done. Ammon worshipped and offered sacrifices to all the idols Manasseh had made. But unlike his father Manasseh, he did not humble himself before the Lord. Ammon increased his guilt. And so there's this pattern of these people not putting themselves in a posture of submission to the Lord that is contributing to their errant ways. And I'm arguing that as long as they are alive, they have an opportunity to cry out in distress and humble themselves. They have that choice that they can make as long as they're alive, which is kind of what, to me, Ecclesiastes 9 says. You know, the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, and they have no longer any part in this thing. So as long as you're alive, you have a part. You can make a choice. The question is, do you make a choice? And will you make a choice?
Will you make a choice?
Let's go.
What circumstances have to come for you to make that choice?
Well, let's go to Psalm 106. I'm not sure it'll answer the question, but it'll put us in the direction to answer the question. Because Psalm 106 to me also, this came again after talking to Z, and it's like all this week, I felt like the word was kind of answering that. Because we left it hanging on Sabbath. Psalm 106, 43 and 43 to 46. So this is, Psalm 106 is like a summary of the children of Israel, right?
Right.
Their whole history.
Yeah.
All right. How long did Saul live? 40 something years? 50 something years? 80 something years?
Something like that.
Let's give him 60. Somebody tell us how long Saul lived. Check it and find out.
4 and 10.
But let's give him 60 for now.
Okay.
You're gonna tell me that God was more long suffering with the children of Israel than Saul in the 60 years?
I wouldn't say that.
Do you think the people of Israel were worse than Saul? Or Saul was worse than them? All things considered.
67.
I mean, all things considered, you would say the children of Israel, but how many times they went back and forth? Then they had to do the sojourn because of their hard-headedness and their...
Not only that, then he said, I'm going to tell your kids this song because y'all going to mess up. That's the part I can understand. Then they taught the kids this song.
That's where I'm going, right? So they have had this stiff-neckedness and rebellious nature within them.
They won.
That is no real different than Saul.
Right.
So is Saul so special that God just abandoned him, but he stuck with the children of Israel?
All million of them.
All right.
One abandoned.
So let's look
with millions.
let's look at the character of God, because that was one of the things I guess we were trying to articulate, but we did not have like scripture to demonstrate. We could talk about it from the stories, but we didn't have like a verse or two that kind of succinctly describes the character of God in dealing with people in rebellion, like Saul was. But Psalm 106 to me kind of captures it. Psalm 106:43 says, "Many times he delivered them, but they were bent on rebellion, and they wasted away in their sin. Yet he took note of their distress when he heard their cry. For their sake he remembered his covenant, and out of his great love he relented. He caused all who held them captive to show them mercy. But it was only when they humble themselves."
Mine said something different. So
Go ahead.
for 46, he said he also made them to be pitied by all those who carried them away captive. Save us, O Lord, our God, and gather us from among the Gentiles to give thanks to your holy name, to triumph in your praise. Blessed be the Lord God of Israel from everlasting to everlasting, and let all the people say amen. Praise
Let's
the Lord.
go. Let's go over to the next chapter, 107,
Okay.
17 to 20. "Some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered afflictions because of their iniquities." You could almost say, he took their spirit from them and now they had to suffer as a result, right? "They loathed all food and drew near to the gates of death." Like Saul on his spear. "Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He sent out word and healed them and rescued them from the grave." Saul was not destined to become what he had to become. He made choices all along the way. And I would argue from Psalm 106, Psalm 107, the stories of the Bible, and just Manasseh alone, Manasseh and Nebuchadnezzar, if Saul had said, "You know what, Lord, I'm sorry. I messed up," God would have, his story could have turned out differently. He may not have become king and become a permanent king, but his story he wouldn't have ended up the way that he ended up. God had this way of rescuing from the depths of the grave.
So it's about humbling yourself and coming from the position of your heart, like really being open with God about what you did wrong. That there was a side that was not a part of his will. Instead of ignoring that fact, trying to keep it hidden in your heart and be like, "Lord, help me out in this new will that I have.
Correct.
Because this seems right to me, so just help me out with this."
Correct.
Pick from my options, please.
Pick from my options.
I mean, we do it all the time.
Right.
God, if I'm supposed to get this job, do this. If I'm not supposed to get this job, do that.
Sometimes we only pray and fast when we need an answer to a job. We don't care about God in all the regular lives. A lot of the time. Not all of us. But some of the times, we ain't doing no devotion, we ain't going to church, we ain't reading the Bible. But the minute we trying to buy a house, and we having a little problem, we in prayer meeting every week.
But it's still from my options, though. This is what I believe I want. Pick from these options, please. And if I don't get it, "Oh, you ain't want me to work. You didn't want me to have this house.
Right.
I mean, it's not the humbling. It's not the humbling at all.
So with the job option, what would be the way to humble yourself and, I guess, put it out?
I was telling Jared earlier this week that my faith ain't there yet with many things. I think maybe, Lord, I have to sit where I'm at. Even if this job sucks, or I need to move, even if I know it feels like this is going to get worse. Versus, I really want to stay here. Show me a sign that I should stay. Which is what we always do. And then that's that unmet expectation. That's the God's not doing anything for me. Well, you kind of backed the man in the corner and he chose to abstain.
Or like in Saul's case, I kind of already told you how this is going to play out. There's nothing else for me to say. Don't ask me because you're going to get the same answer. And if you keep asking me, I'm going to just keep quiet. You have people like that? They call you and they're asking you the same thing 12 different... You had a friend like that.
Yeah.
Ask you the same thing 12 different times and come around the same question from 15 different points of view. And after a while, you're like, you know what? Don't call me because I'm going to say the exact same
Same
thing the same thing before.
Yeah.
all the time. So I'm just not gonna say anything. And you're vexed
What's up,
because
David?
you're not answering me. No, you haven't given me an option that's worth it, and you're still where you were last week. So
You just,
I mean,
you don't want to take my advice. Your
he's-
belly hurting and you don't want to take the pain medication.
God did the same thing with Moses. Don't ask me this no more, Britt. Like don't ask.
And Moses' response was different.
Right. Kept asking, can I go? Can I go? Don't ask me again if you can go. Like we're done.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
So he changed his plan. All right, fine. Then I guess I'll just wrap this on up and do what I need to do.
Right.
You know, I mean, I hate to say it. Even with Jesus, it could be when he just said, "Take this." Listen, we talked about this, bro. This is hurting me. Like you know. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But we don't see it. We're not looking at it from that perspective. We look at it from if I don't get what I want, I'm being punished.
He don't like me.
He not listening to me. His spirit has been moved from me. I've sinned somewhere and I forgot. Hold on, let me think about the sin I did so I can just repent. Hold on, let me repent of all my sins before I pray again because,
Right.
you know, that's what's blocking this.
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah, I was just so profoundly moved, particularly by the Psalms. We read Psalm 106 and 107 was today, right? Yeah, I think Psalm 107 was today, and I was surprised that this description of God rescuing people from the throes of death when they humble themselves, kind of recolored Saul's experience for me, because I started to see in Saul by his actions, or by at least the snapshot of the actions that the writer of Samuel gives, is that Saul is taking authority and autonomy over decisions when his role is simply to be a steward and a manager. He's trying to be the owner, and he's trying to make decisions that he thinks is best and has not positioned himself. But what you see from David is when Saul dies, he goes and he inquires of the Lord, should I go up to Hebron? Lord, what do you want from me? Lord, what is your will in this? Lord, what's the best thing? Now, David is not perfect because clearly he acts up and does things that God does not want him to do. But when he is called out on it, he positions himself such that he's humbled himself under God's authority in those situations. You know, and he deals with whatever God has to mete out accordingly. But he doesn't try to re-elevate himself. That's the whole story of Nebuchadnezzar. You know, Nebuchadnezzar was God's servant doing whatever he wanted. When he elevated himself after he was warned by God, you elevate yourself, I'm gonna deal with you, you know.
Yeah.
And then he was slipping, elevated himself. So I want to ask yourself, in that 7 years, if he had the mind of an animal, how did he have the presence of mind to humble himself?
I think it makes us feel better to think that God left us and I'm not capable of humbling myself. Makes you feel better. He left me.
Pharaoh hardening the heart is the same thing.
I'm incapable and he's not with me. How?
Just saying that.
Why did it take Nebuchadnezzar 7 years? Walking around outside, eating grass. Crazy. At some point, he was able to come to a moment of clarity and say, and make a decision.
But that's a level of accountability that many of us don't want. Because when Nebuchadnezzar came to that decision, at that point you have to choose. Now that I'm aware of my foolishness, do I change? Or do I literally live in my foolishness? Nobody wants to take that level of accountability. It's easier for me to say, you've made the choice for me. I can't come back because you've turned your back on me. Versus,
saying that.
oh, shoot, I messed up.
I would say as long as you have life, you can make that choice. That power is still with you. You just have to choose.
You have your right mind. You don't even have to be in your right mind as you mention it.
Yeah. That's right. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't in his right mind.
When he made the decision.
And then there's a story of Asa. Asa in 2 Chronicles 15 and 16.
Second Chronicles.
He's another king in there. You just kind of have to put all these pictures together in mosaic. You can't like study Saul by himself and come up with the full picture because you don't get to see the full range of God's moving. Because, I love that book. The book suggests that the story is God is the main character, and so it's really him, and these are all side characters about God and not about them, right? So, Asa came in as a good king. He cleared out. He disposed his mother as queen. Got rid of the high places. Chapter 15, verse 17. And one description of him says his heart was fully committed to the Lord all his life. Right? Then he started feeling himself in chapter 16. Sorry.
What does it say? Okay, I see.
15, 17. Yeah. Right? So that's the initial introduction to Asa. But then there comes chapter 16, where he is taking the silver and the gold out of his treasury and sending it to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, verse 2. He tried to make a treaty there, and the king comes to him and says, not the king, the prophet, verse 7, comes to him and says, and this kind of summarizes the story. At that time, 16:7, at that time Hanai the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hands. Would not the Cushites and Libyans a mighty army with great numbers of charioteers and horsemen? Yet when you relied on the Lord then, my Bible doesn't say then, but I was referring to them because it's another time he's talking about, he delivered them into your hands. In that instance, Asa didn't have any options. If you go back and read that story, Asa felt trapped. He felt like there was nowhere to go, and all he had was God. He relied on God. God delivered him. Now he comes up into another situation, and he decides, what are my options? Oh, I could make a treaty here. He makes his own decision, best judgment of the situation, to ask the king of Aram to help. And now the prophet is calling him out, because he's calling him out. You didn't trust God to help you in this situation. You took this matter into your own hand. You decided what you were going to do to resolve your situation. And now the king has escaped from your hand. And he goes on to say, for the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him.
Oh, where you again?
I'm at verse 9, 16:9.
Gotcha.
For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. You have done a foolish thing, and from now on you'll be at war. Verse 10, Asa was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him to prison. At that same time, Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. Then goes on to say, the events of Asa's reign from beginning to end are written in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, I'm going to put in here, God had mercy on Asa and afflicted his feet with disease. Right? I added in the mercy part. But it just says that he afflicted his feet with disease. Though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not humble himself. I'm going to insert that in there. To seek help from the Lord, but only from physicians. Again, he was looking for the most logical way, the way that he saw fit, the way his judgment determined was the best way to handle the situation. And he died. God gave him an opportunity to humble himself, created a situation for him to rely on him. And he was so bad mind.
I don't know. I wonder if it's bad mind or... I don't need God in every decision.
Same thing.
No.
Yeah. I would
To the
say
average person, people like to make the distinction of the two.
Okay.
Because when you think bad mind, you think I'm doing something negative or,
Fair enough.
It's bad. It's just...
Fair enough. I received that.
Like, people, I don't have to ask God about that. That's so small. And we've heard Kendrick mention something like that. Maybe about a year ago, he was just like, I never realized I got to talk to God about everything. Certain things is just like, as a human, I can use my conscience and just, make a decision.
Right.
So here it's like, I got physicians. I'm a king. I mean, I got the best of them. Like, I don't think my foot and me and God are connected. So.
And right there, he, like the rest of us, missed it. Because that is just it is an area because, and here's why he probably wouldn't have thought it. He got rid of the idols. He was living right. He had done what the other kings didn't do.
He got rid of the stuff.
Cleared out shop.
Like spiritually, in his house, you know, they ain't watching garbage on the TV. They ain't, you know, he ain't partying and clubbing no more. He not. But he had a disease of his foot, and he sought something else, the witch, instead of God.
Right.
Because it's so small.
It's a small thing.
It's a little thing. I don't need to bother God with this. This is small.
But when you combine that with the other stories, it Saul shakes out differently. And I guess that's where I wanted to say.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, Saul had good intentions. Like, and I think a lot of times we paint a lot of these characters who seemingly die on the wrong side of the fence. I'm not in a position to tell you what's going to happen with Saul.
Right.
That they meant well. It was simply the relationship they had with God. I like to relate to Genie in a bottle. Not Genie grant me my wishes, but Genie talks to me when I want you to. Come out when I summon you. Let's speak. I don't need you right now. I'm good to go.
Which means I am the authority and you are at my behest.
That's the wrong way to put it. Such a wrong way to view God.
But that's what you're really taught. We don't want to admit it, but that's what you're taught.
Expound.
The misuse of ask and you shall receive. The misuse of for I know the plans I have for you and to prosper you, and you know, the misuse of if you humble yourself and pray and seek my face and turn from your wicked, I'll heal you.
Yeah.
It's call on me and I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Versus we don't remember when God says in Deuteronomy, hey, listen, all this ritualistic stuff. I got angels that their only purpose is to
Say holy.
To sing and to say holy. I want relationship. I want this. I want that. We don't remember those pieces. We're taught the ask.
And you should receive.
And you should receive. When summoned, please come.
Yeah. You don't realize. Not that asking and you shall receive is not correct.
No, but it's a misuse
Correct.
of the ask and
It's
receive.
interpretation of
Correct. Guys, chime in. Your thoughts before we transition.
it. I have to use the restroom.
Quick. Oh, not quick. Take your time. Go ahead. Man, I'm sorry I'm sitting there, but that was real powerful for me this week. You know, at least in light of our conversation about, you know, my decision on how to process this transition. Yeah, it was humble and ask him, inquire of him. I think I even made that note later on, you know. Inquire of the Lord in everything. That was from today's reading, because that's what sorts David did when he was coming out of Hebron. Anything else stood out to you this week? Because I know I just gave you half of mine.
I don't know if we have the time to think about, like, I think I may have taken a screenshot of it. I remember we were at church, and I had a question about this. We were at church. I think it was at some community service event, and we were talking about Abigail, and she popped up in our reading this week.
Neighbor's wife.
Right.
David's wife.
David's wife?
Nabal's wife, but she becomes David's wife.
Yo, Dre, leave at this point. She's somebody else's chick.
Right.
But the way, who is this chick? Like, I know she's a writer.
This is 1 Samuel 25, right?
Yeah, and then she gets captured in 30. And then my Bible then refers to David's wives getting captured, but then it says she's still a widow. It's like, I'm confused. I don't know.
Oh, she's simultaneously widow and...
How, Sway? That doesn't make sense.
So, Abigail was married to Nabal. Nabal dies. She becomes a widow. David sends for her and marries her. So when the Bible is referring to her, it's kind of like descriptions to help you remember who she was and who she was connected to. So she's Nabal's widow, but she's also David's wife at the same time.
But the way it reads, it says his 2 wives were captured.
Yeah, because he had another one. He had the girl from Jezreel.
Yeah, he know
The first wife.
Yeah.
That was his first wife. And when before he became king, he only had those 2 wives. He had Abigail and this other chick. And he was moving around with them and his boys. And then they got attacked in Ziklag. And they took off the wives and the children of all the men and the families.
Yeah. I was confused. I was just like, who is this chick? Like, she's on the description of wife, but they're calling her widow. Okay, so it's a description. Okay.
Yeah. It's just an identifier.
All right. Well, it's just like, I'm teething people woman again. Like, Saul versus David versus Asa.
Well, she was.
Wasn't it?
Any good questions or feedback?
No, I was just wondering about, we answered it, Abigail. I was like, who is this chick? Because at one point they describe her as David's wife, and then they refer to her as Nabal's widow. And I was like, how is she widow and wife at the same time? I know she's a writer. Everybody mentions her, but...
Yeah, she's the one who had the wherewithal to realize her husband's response to David, his humble response was way out of line, and knew David was going to come through and take him out. It's like, my husband is a fool. Doesn't the ball mean fool or something?
That's exactly what it means.
I remember reading his name meant fool. So she was like, my husband tripping. Send David these gifts and tell him I'm coming. Let them meet him first, and then I'll meet him afterward.
You know, I never understood how she was able to rouse up so much food so quickly.
Yo, what do you mean?
Like,
he had great wealth.
But who does have like 200 raisin cakes just laying around?
You act like
you got
in Trinidad when they decide to lime at your house of a Sabbath. You looking where my mother get all this food from?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden food just come out of nowhere.
Bread don't bake that fast. I'm just saying, it's like she has bread stacked up.
She probably
may
knew.
have them in storage,
Or knew something was about to. You know what? This man will lose his mind. I'ma just
look.
have
It
it
was
ready.
look at this. It's 200 loaves of bread she carried for the man, you know. How long it take to cook 200 loaves of bread?
She made haste.
She
made haste.
Right?
She made
All
haste.
right. 2 skins of wine that might have been sitting in the corner. 5 dressed sheep. All right, I could get that. Roasted grain in a bag. You know. All right, cool. This is 1 Samuel 25.
Clusters of raisins
verse 18.
and 200 cakes of
Yeah.
figs.
200 cakes of pressed figs. Like,
Dee said.
see? She was thinking the same thing. I'm a baker, and baking is a process.
She she probably ready. Desperate times calling. Exactly, Harold. She was, she made haste, Dred. Made haste.
Nah, that was just amazing.
Maybe she called the homies too. You know, maybe the other chicks in the area, bake 2 bread for me, and I bake 2 bread, and 2 bread, and 2 bread.
Even though David was real far away, or they knew how to bake bread real fast. And it was like roti they was making on tower, you know, they just
running through.
You call the troops up, you can get some food going. You get the food.
Yeah. Because he was the next morning. Yeah, it was overnight.
Call the troops. Get the food going.
Yeah. It was overnight. Wow. There must be. There's plenty servants.
Oh, your friend on the street
Keisha said she had a cookout.
Exactly. Cookout.
Yeah, cook.
Overnight lime. Hello, everybody turn on the stove. Everybody turn on the stove. We cooking tonight. My husband is about to die. We need to feed the king and his people.
And his man.
Like, we gotta do this. He's done.
He praised it too.
Because
It
listen,
should be
verse
better. He was
22.
like, surely.
May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave one male of all who belong to him.
Alive. Yeah.
It wasn't 2 days. She had a night to pull all this together.
Call the homies up, yo. You gotta know the people.
She was writing for him
Like,
the
I'm coming to
very
get this
next
dude tonight.
day.
Because he was just so disrespectful. He was so unnecessarily disrespectful.
He didn't think so, though.
Yo. He did not think so.
No.
Because that's
No,
just how he was.
Right.
He was being a jerk.
No,
you
Jay.
can
He was
hear it.
probably-
You can hear it in
he
his
was
language.
Probably, yeah, he was a jerk.
Listen,
But that was
he was
who
a rich
he
jerk.
was. It wasn't like he was just being jerked today. He probably didn't think it was any more or less than when I was yesterday. Or I'll be tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, that's
why
just-
should I take my bread and water and
Yeah,
meat
you can
and
hear it,
water
yeah,
and
yeah.
give it to the man who comes from who knows where?
Yeah.
That's jerk
Another,
behavior.
what I'm saying
Everybody know who
is,
David
Every
is.
time.
that's something I can see Kendrick saying any day of the week, son. And then
Yeah, but Kendrick would know in that instance who it is coming to him. Right now, he's just being difficult
Just for no reason.
for no reason. Listen to his language. I mean, he says,
who's David? Who's son of Jesse?
Jesse. Yeah. Where? Yes, verse 10.
Yeah.
Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. I mean, like, he knows David running away from Saul. Like, everybody knew who David was.
But you ain't nobody. You ain't nobody for me to feed you. You under 100. What is in this for me?
But I just tell you, I've been looking out for your people. Your boys and all come and tell you, this man has been nice to us, he take care of us, we ain't lose nothing, all of that good stuff.
You're on your own, Dread. You running from the king, yo. You got your own problem. Get your own problem.
Give it to men coming from who knows where. That fella needed licks. I never noticed it before till we look at it just now. And yeah, I could see why David gets so riled up.
Every man strap on his sword. Everybody strap up.
And you know what he was doing before?
But he must have been this way because his wife called the troops. No, the wife had to know this is how my husband, he always gets me in trouble. So guess what? He picked the wrong one today. Ladies.
Get ready.
I'm not dying for you today. Because, you know, when David killed people, he killed
Everybody
everybody.
after dead.
Take
Everybody is
everybody
dead.
out, huh?
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's regular behavior for his wife to react that quickly. Friends don't look like they
Yeah, she
hesitated.
know who she married.
So,
It's probably arranged.
And she know who he was wrong to, who he was mean to.
well, he
Yeah.
probably knew. He probably thought Saul was gonna catch him before he did. Like, for example, if David's running from Saul, and I'm rude, the last thing I think is that you're gonna get riled up and come kill me. You might just move on to the next man and ask them for something. You know. So, I failed with getting something from him. I'm gonna just go to not you coming for me.
Mm.
Like.
Oh, you think you're big and bad and don't realize who I am. You know, that's
But I'm willing to die early to kill you. Basically, that's what he's saying. Like, I gotta make a pit stop. Come kill you and your people. And they continue to run.
That's true. You ain't gonna never come for me on this territory. Fair enough. I respect that. Bradley, what stood out to you this week?
Man, it was a difficult week, and I gotta confess I did not finish the reading plan.
That's all
this
right.
week, though I had meant to. But I got little things from like small verses in Mark, and reason being is because right before I started reading in preparation for the day, I realized I looked at the plan. I was like, oh, we coming out of Mark. I just finished Mark.
Okay.
I'm like halfway in Levi right now, just going through the New Testament. And so I was going back and starting in chapter 8, and I'm gonna bounce to verses, but they're all like after each other. You know, they're in order. And there were just little things that I had noticed, like starting with I remember reading about the story of the blind man who was healed at Bethsaida. And the thing is, I got a little disappointed because I remember Mark is the briefest of all the Gospels. So I'm looking for the expanse of the story as I'm reading, and I'm forgetting, oh yeah, Mark is just... And there was a dude, he was blind, Jesus healed him. He was like, don't go back in there. All right, next story. And I'm like, Mark, come on,
Point
man.
made, on
Let me
to
know
the-
what happened. It's
Nah.
like I gotta run back. And then like even further in Mark, when I think it's get to like the later chapters, and I'm not bouncing it now, but it's like when the Pharisees tested Jesus, then the Sadducees tested Jesus, then the scribes, and that one lawyer, and then after Jesus got attacked, those 3 times in Matthew, he has a whole discourse saying, "Whoa, do not be like the Pharisees, because them jokers don't practice what they preach." Like he just went on. So I always I actually had to teach on that for a Sabbath school lesson to these kids, and I made like a rap battle. I was like, they tried to go with Jesus like 3 different times. He was playing it cool, and then he got the microphone, and then he just went on them. And then I read everything he said about the scribes and the Pharisees, and then he was embarrassing them in front of the people. He's like, these are the jokers over here you don't need to be following, because they'll put all these burdens on you, and one of their fingers they won't help you with it. It's like not only are they going to hell, but not only are they not allowing you to experience the kingdom, but they holding the keys and locking you out. Like they ain't even letting you pass on. So it's kind of like. That was the mindset. I was like, okay, I'm reading Mark. So when I got into that mindset, like a couple of things impressed me. Like since I know about the story of the blind man, on Mark 8 verses 26, it says, "Then he sent him away to his house, saying, neither go into town nor tell anyone in town." And I remember when the story of this blind man was told before, everybody in that town was a doubter. They were a non-believer. They did not think that Jesus could heal this blind man. And Jesus had to take him out of the city in order to take care of him, like to heal him, because there was so much doubt, so much negativity.
Really?
And I started thinking about how when Jesus went into Jairus' house to heal his daughter, and all the mourners in there were crying and making all that noise, but before Jesus put them out, they started to ridicule Jesus. And they weren't just crying and making noise; they started to ridicule what he's gonna do. And then he's like, "No, y'all gotta get out of here." Because there's too much doubt clogging. And every time you read about Jesus performing a miracle, he said, your faith has made you well. You believe. So it's like the belief and faith, you got to cultivate and nurture that. You got to put it in a place where it can be cultivated and nurtured, so truly great things can happen.
So question. Now you're making my mind
That's a good
wonder.
point. Yeah, you just set me on a I'm Rolodexing right now.
Nah, but that's when it actually Myron Evans preached a sermon about this same thing like a while back, and I remember that the same thing you're thinking about that impressed me. I was like, wow, yeah, he did have to call him out. He was like, he took him out there for. It's like Jesus always removed the people who had that sincere need, and it actually brings me even back to I remember we had this conversation when Jairus first asked Jesus when he was en route to his house. You know, all the crowd was throwing him. Then the woman with the blood came through. She got a little touch on the robe. It was like, boom, I'm clean. After all this happened, Jairus is standing there like, okay, hurry up. You know, come to my house because my daughter. And then servant comes. Daughter's dead. And then they said something very particular. I never forget when I read these words. The Lord, it's like they just jumped off the page. It says, do not bother the master anymore. And the reason why that stuck out to me is because Satan right when you're about to get your blessing, Satan will always hit you as like, leave the master alone. He ain't worried about you. But immediately, if you read it, Jesus immediately responds. He was like, oh, hold on. Do not doubt, only believe. And that's what he said to him. And then they continued to the house. It's very small. It's in like 1 or 2 verses that's mentioned. You had the servant saying, don't bother him no more. And then Jesus immediately speaks to that situation. He's like, don't doubt. Only believe. Then he goes, and the miracle happens. Right. Keeps the atmosphere right. So, what you about to say, Shay?
No, it's interesting because like I was in a prayer circle this week. We were in a prayer circle this week, right? Mm-hmm. Someone was sick, and I hate cop-out prayers. Sorry, just no disrespect to anybody, but Lord, heal the person. But if not, thy will be done. It's cop-out prayers. Like anything you look, it works any way you look at it. But here, if the words you're saying, basically, Jesus is clearing out the doubt. Like, if y'all not down to say I can do this, then y'all need to go, because I don't need it. I don't need that right here. Not to say that he can't do it with amongst the doubt. Just, it's not necessary. You're not benefiting from it because you're doubting anyway. And so it makes me think about here where, we may be praying for something or healing of someone or an answer for something, and whether or not we need to really be serious about that energy. Like, yo, for real, if you doubt and don't join don't join this. Like, and it's okay. And he doesn't condemn them. You know, he takes you out of the city or takes the group and says, let's do our thing. But how important is that for us when, you know, everybody wants to pray with you? Everybody always wants to pray, but some people just, there's the doubt.
So, I'm wondering what the doubt is in, and whether it's just doubt that he will do it, doubt that he can do it, because those are two different
things.
Yes.
Two different things.
Very different.
Or just doubted who he is and what he has the power to do.
From the stories, I don't, at least from the people he healed, it wasn't a doubt of whether he could. I think it was a doubt of who he was, by whom he was doing this work.
Gotcha. So that was the biggest problem with the Pharisees. They would think he was blaspheming all the time. See?
Right? It's not that I don't. It's like I see you flip that table. Who you calling to help flip?
Yeah. Who you calling to help flip? It's like what he did in the room when the dude had to drop the paraplegic through the roof. He's like, which is better, to tell a man he's forgiven of his sins, or to rise, take up your bed and walk? But to show you that the Son of Man has both authority to forgive sins and heal, then you just get up, take your bed and walk. So he would debunk the Pharisees' thoughts, which he perceived without them even having to say it, because he already knew what their argument was. And they never wanted to identify themselves with the true root of their argument, which was, this dude is taking the people away from us. He's stealing our power. He's stealing our thunder. That was the real root of the problem the Pharisees had. Their pride was getting knocked all the way around, and they were getting cut down to size. And they liked where they were, and they wanted anything to change.
Man, so as you talk about that, Mark chapter 6.
Mark 6.
Keisha says something. Amen. You need to put some respect on my prayer.
So Jesus is walking on water, right? They're on the lake. There's a storm. They see Jesus. He climbs in the boat. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. That verse always trips me up, because it's almost like Mark thinks that whoever's reading this understands what he's talking about very clearly.
Yeah.
Like, and it should be so obvious. But then I came across Psalm 107 today, and it made more sense. Because if I had that kind of thing in my mind, this would make more sense. But, you know, Psalm 107 wasn't in my mind because I never paid attention to it. Psalm 107, 28 and 30. 28 says, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed. They were glad when it grew calm, and he guided them to their desired haven. Now, this is way before Jesus. You have the psalmist describing God's ability to calm storms and literal seas and physical whatnot. Here you have Jesus doing that, and multiplying bread the chapter before, the couple of verses before. Clearly, by whose power is he doing this, if the Bible says it's the Lord who's calming storms by the whisper? So when it says, for they had not understood about the loaves, for their hearts were hardened, it wasn't about the loaves that they didn't understand. It's about by the who that he was doing it that they didn't understand, and they didn't connect the two together to make this, because there's a clear definition of, you know, stuff God does. And this almost sounds like two different stories in the New Testament. Jesus walking on water, and then Jesus sleeping on the boat. He gets up and does exactly the same thing. He has the power to command the sea and the waves, just like the God of Psalm 106.
But you know what's interesting? The difference between the walk on water and the miracles. At least the walk on water and the loaves. In the loaves, he looks to heaven, said a blessing, keeps it moving. In many cases, they've seen him call on the Father, do something. On water, my man is just chilling on water. Like, So it's like, wait a minute, you didn't ask to be on water. Who the heck are you? Because we've seen you ask, which makes sense. But now you're just walking.
You just on the water, looking like a ghost.
and now where you said they didn't understand the connection.
I didn't before.
No. I mean more so the father and the son connection. Like when he says, "I and my father are one."
Yeah.
Here is showing. Of course, I respect my father's command and speak in the blessing, and I'm showing you what this looks like. But technically, I already was given this power before I left, and I don't really gotta do all of this. But hey, I'm trying to leave an example for y'all for how this works. No, I kind of see if I'm in the boat, no average little man is gonna come to that profound conclusion that, oh shoot. Oh, you just doing this to the benefit of me? Because you have this power on your own.
Man. And now the yeast and the Pharisees make more sense. Don't buy into the idea that the Pharisees trying to put doubt into who I am.
That's the 11.
That leaven.
Yeah.
Don't question that. And when he says, when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls did you pick up? 7. Do you still not understand? And like you said, Mark doesn't provide.
He doesn't do it.
Provide it. He doesn't help fill the gap. He just assumes that it's obvious to everybody.
Like, you ain't read Matthew, Levi.
I'm giving you the abridged version.
Yeah, exactly. You ain't read Matthew, Luke, and John. I mean,
this is the Cliff Notes. I'm telling you what the main points are.
Oh, Mark.
You know what? It's like that. The memes are going around with the lady being seen, calling everything. I seen it on people's timelines, and I didn't know what it was. But everybody around me seems to understand what's happening in that picture, and that's how I felt reading Mark.
Yeah.
I had to Google
that woman.
Woman calling, or
meme of woman calling.
And then I saw the video, and then it made sense. But that's kind of like how I felt reading this. Like, what? I don't get it. I didn't get it.
Mark is assuming you read this somewhere else. I'm giving you the abridged version.
Exactly.
Or assuming that the point is so blatantly obvious that just the disciples are clueless. That everybody else who's reading this understands this so clearly. I was like, oh,
that's a different way. Yeah.
Man, sorry though. I mean, Brady, I didn't mean to take you off.
Nah, that was a good avenue we took because it led to more clarity for other things. Mm-hmm. And just like when I heard that summary, I started thinking, I was like, well, what other times did Jesus tell them not to to be quiet and to not do this? Or when did he tell them to go do something? Like when he healed the demoniac, it's like, go show yourself to the priest, and that was for the priest's benefit, so they might have faith. You know what I'm saying? But still, their hearts were hardened. Going on, like just a couple verses that just spoke to me on why they did. I was alarmed and I was thinking about verse 33 of chapter 8 when it says, "But when he had turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, 'Get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men.'"
It's Jared's favorite verse.
It is. Why is it your favorite verse?
Because for me, it's one of those verses that captures an idea so powerfully that helps to explain a lot of human behavior, and human interaction.
Yeah.
And that idea of, not looking at things the way God would want us to look at them, or with the priority that He has.
It's kind of like it draws me to when James and John was like, you want us to fry these bammers real quick? He was like, man, you don't even know what type of spirit you speaking in. Or even more so when they said when James and John, when it's like, can we sit on either side of your throne when you get up there? And he was like, are you able to?
They weren't even trying to talk about when you get up there.
They
thought they meant like
they've been down here, right. That was their mindset.
Take Caesar out.
Right.
Yeah, like this is about to happen.
But their mindset was on security of power, security of position, and it's pretty much, it's almost like projecting ourselves to know God's plan more so than we do. Because that's what Peter was saying right here. It's like, oh, you ain't nothing gonna happen to you, man. We around you. You know what I'm saying? Nobody gonna get at you. And he's like, get behind me, Satan. I mean, that's a strong rebuke. That'll cut your pride right there. And so when I read stuff like that, it changes my prayer up. It changes my prayers and let me not be mindful of me so much and what I think I know, but to have more so the knowledge of what you know and what you have going on, because it.
Or what is your priority? Because
what is your priority?
In our priorities is our own comfort and our own self-preservation.
Right.
And particularly you see that in the context here. He's telling them, I'm about to get killed. And Peter, well-intentioned, says, you don't have to go through that. You don't have to do it that way. There's a different way to go about it.
Right.
But God's concern is that this thing happens so that this thing can be the outcome. Mm-hmm. If I have my concerns on my mind, then I'm not going to do what God asks, and I'm going to do like Saul. God's concern is wait on Samuel to come back before you do the thing so that I can continue to be in charge of this thing.
Right.
When you decide to make the judgment on your own, you don't have my concerns in mind. You don't have my priorities in mind. You're not even thinking about me. You're thinking about yourself. And so that's why it's my favorite, but I'm going to agree wholeheartedly that we don't often view our situations asking what are God's concerns in this matter, which would lead us back to the prayer that you were talking about. When we're praying, what are God's concerns in this matter? That would then inform our prayer. Because if we know that God's concern is that my child is suffering and I want to put him to sleep so that he'll be no longer suffering, then we won't be praying, if it's your will that he get healed. You'll be like, give her peace and sleep. Because that's his concern.
That's his concern.
Or that could be his concern. I'm not saying that it is. His concern is also the salvation of people. And
that would be a very humble prayer to pray. And that's something you got to practice. I'm thinking about it like right now, like in certain situations that I have currently going on. What is God's concern? And we may even already think we know his concern.
Mm-hmm. His concern in many cases is our convenience in our head.
Yes, in our head, his concern is our convenience. And his concern might be something else altogether. But sometimes we don't even stop to ask. Jesus was aware of what his concern was, so he was able to recognize when the advice he was given or the concern that Peter was saying wasn't in line with God's concern.
You know where it gets harder? Is when Mary says it best. When the heart's not hearing what the brain is saying and you're weak in your knees, right?
Correct.
Meaning
yes.
your heart
if you understood what Sharika just said, or understand that reference, just say boop in the chat. If that reference made sense.
It's like you want to pray with the concerns of God. Mm-hmm. You're just not there yet. And so do you utter the words when your heart is not
in it?
How do you
do that?
It's like, is that doubt? Is that attempt? What is it?
That's humanity.
It's like
that's humanity. That's like the base. That's like one of the cores of it. Oh. It's preservation of self. That's the only thing I keep getting drawn back to when I think about that. I mean, that would be why you would not want to even utter it from your heart. That's why you would have the difficulty to begin with.
Mm-hmm. My own selfish desires. I'm gonna go back to the same death. Somebody's sick. My concern is I want this lady to get better. Because that's what I want, and that's what I think is best. But I don't know about her grandson, who needs this moment for him to come to God. God's concern isn't just what I want and what I think is right, but he's thinking about that child, and the lady down the street, and the neighbor up the way.
And Bradley tired, and this one need to go back to work, and so therefore... Healing sounds great in theory, but there are 5 other people here who their teams have to win this time. And it seems like you're taking the L. It's like, not really. The long game is here.
concerns of God. What is ultimately his concern? That we each come to know him and have this experience, at least that opportunity to know him. This lady might have made her peace and stuff with God. Taking her now allows her to stay secure. It might hurt you and you might cry, but my concern is that she is safe.
This one I locked in. These 4 or 5, hey,
And if she stays,
I lose them.
it's gonna impact them in some.
Or make my job a lot harder. And so therefore, I got one already. Let me deal with the other 4.
All I'm saying is, this verse makes me change my prayer as well to try and figure out, well, at least inquire of God, what are your concerns, so that I can ask in line with that.
Or just acknowledge. I think
Yes, or just acknowledge. Yes.
PG said it last Sabbath. Maybe it was last Sabbath or something. All these days are adding up to me. Could have been Monday, Tuesday. Let me at least be okay with your why.
Mm-hmm.
So I might not have the strength to say you're concerned, God, not mine. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, God, but I know you know better. When you tell me the why, just let me be okay with that. Which is a humbling, and a realization of self. I'm not there yet, but
even that is having in mind the concerns of God, because it recognizes that the concerns of God are more important than my own concerns. And that's a humbling of self and a posturing of submission to his concerns over mine and my ignorance to them. So that I would even say that's one and the same thing.
Because I was looking at it from I'm not asking you to do your will because I'm not there yet. That's disbelief. I don't believe that mine shouldn't be granted. I'm simply saying yours is better, regardless of how I feel about mine, and help me understand why.
I got you.
Which is interesting.
Sorry, Ryan, we done take over your thing again.
No, it's all good.
We done jump all over it.
It's all good.
I didn't even get to hear why that verse impacted you. I just jumped in and.
No, it was along those lines. Our behavior and our thought, even with the master right there, it could be so we can. It's so easy to supplant his will, and he's right there. To know, it's like, no, he don't know what he talking about.
Right. Wow.
To be right there, if one of his most adamant disciples, the one that he said, flesh and blood has not revealed to you that I am the Messiah. You know what I'm saying? He called it out, and even him. You know what I'm saying? And that right there, it's like you see how close they were to the source of life, the one who was bringing the very kingdom of God to them, and they still didn't know.
It also shows that you can't get comfortable, and this is no disrespect to anybody who believes this argument, and we should talk about this offline if you truly do. The one save, always save thing.
Oh.
Because Peter, before, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. That means somebody's with you.
Mm.
You with me.
Saul changed his heart.
And now it's like, Satan,
Get behind me, man. Get behind me, bro.
That same spirit. I'm gonna come on now. It's a continuous work that you have to do on self and be mindful of it, because you could get caught slipping. And Peter probably wasn't aware that he was any different from when he spoke earlier and now.
That's Saul again. So he went from God changed his heart to consulting a witch. You know what I'm saying? I like to use nice little fitness example. Once fit, not always fit.
Mm-mm.
You eat 2 cheesecake.
Once fit, not always fit. That's so much more
You eat 2 cheesecake.
It's so much more sobering to say it like that.
It's so true. Like, how did I get here? What you mean, son? You had that cheesecake.
You keep ordering chicken wings and pizza, bro. What you mean?
It felt good, didn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
It's something you have to keep working
going,
at.
right?
The last one I got.
Before you go on,
okay.
there's one thing that just came to me as based on something you said. You said, Jesus was there with him, and he thought he knew better than Jesus. I was seeing that Peter was somebody that Jesus thought highly of. Right? He's in his inner circle. And he had the potential with his influence to derail Jesus's approach to what he was being asked to do. And if I'm not mindful, clear on the concerns of God, the people in my inner circle who I trust can be used as agents of the enemy with good intentions to take me off course. Which is why, Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." It's like, no, it's not you, Peter. I have to remember, it's not Peter telling me this.
It's not flesh and blood.
It's
Principalities and powers.
And sometimes we go to family members for advice, and they're well-meaning. They don't want to see us suffer. They don't want to see us hurt. They don't want to see us disappointed. They don't want to see us have to walk the rough path. And so they trying to protect us and say, God might not want that for you. God may not want you to go that way. God would never have you go that way. That's not God. That's not God to do that. But if you know what the concerns of God are in your situation, you could recognize when there's an issue. And you can recognize when well-meaning advice is satanic advice. And that was the point I wanted to. I didn't want to slip before you moved on.
Lastly was 9:24. Mark 9:24. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." I found that to be one of the realest verses in the Bible.
What was that?
You believe what God can do through what you've heard, but you just don't think He'll deliver. And I see it like evident just to coincide with everything we've been talking about. You make a decision. You believe God can deliver what He said. It's just like in you. It's like, I don't really think He gonna do this. I don't.
You believe He can, but you don't think He will.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Yeah, and that's why He asked for help in that area, because it's like, I don't know what to do to change this around. I don't know what to do not to think like that.
A lot of people are sitting in that valley. I feel like I jump in there every so often. Because I think it's not even a matter of, basically, I'm going to speak for myself. It's a matter of, I don't even deserve it. I know you can. I know it's really something I want. I don't deserve it, though.
Psalm 106, it was 8. Psalm 106 was great this week, sorry.
Okay.
Psalm 106 verse 8. I paraphrased it for my own purposes, but I want you to read it.
Psalm 106 verse 8.
I didn't intend to bring this up. This was for me.
Psalm 106 verse 8. Nevertheless, He saved them for His name's sake, that He might make His mighty power known.
It have nothing to do with you. His desire to heal, to save, to rescue, to provide, blah, blah, blah. Ain't have nothing to do with you and what you deserve and how you've been and blah, 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 blah. His name. What just happened?
I caught up. That's been frozen.
Yeah.
That's not frozen. That just froze. This was always
You
frozen.
just lost your cameras?
You just lost them.
How do you know?
No, the question marks are here.
Oh.
This is always frozen. This computer fell asleep.
No, that's not this. That's the camera.
This computer fell asleep is what I mean.
Oh, yeah. But the cameras dropped off. Alright, we should be back up now.
People. I actually have to go at 10 o'clock. I know it's
Alright,
right
yeah,
now.
well, Well, let's close. Let's close.
Yeah.
Let's close. But as we close, quick question.
Go on.
When Jesus was walking around from city to city, and this is a departing question. Jesus is walking around from city to city. He's teaching, and of course his disciples are baptizing. What church are the people he's baptizing going to?
Dear Heavenly Father.
Takeaway.
Takeaway. Lord's concerns. Ask for the Lord's concerns. And ask him to help you understand his concerns. Because even you need help to make his concerns your concerns.
Got you.
That.
Takeaways.
Just reading Mark, it's more like it's just not about you. Like the whole is not about you. That's big. Just play your part, man. Supporting character.
My takeaway is inquire of the Lord for everything. You know, don't leave anything to chance. Always seek out his concerns.
True.
While you're online, just please just chime in any takeaways that you may have. We're gonna pray and close because Brad has to leave and it is 10 o'clock. So I know we started late and the conversation was just getting good, but we had to close up. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for participating, and please join us again on the first Friday in June, which will be a special Friday, be an extra special Friday. Not just because it's Ladies First Friday, but it will be my first day on my new job.
Hey.
All right.
First day on my new job.
Amen.
Whole career change. Yeah. Anyway, Brad, would you pray for us?
Sure. Lord, Yah Almighty, we thank you for bringing us to the end of another week. Thank you for the powerful discussion that was had here. We pray that the Holy Spirit embed these words in our minds and in hearts so that people will remember these things going down through the week and even through the weekend. We thank you again for the Sabbath. Please cleanse us from any and all iniquities. And we pray that we may continue to be used to spread your good words that somebody may be saved. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. In addition to being on every first and third Friday to have these conversations, we also have a Bible reading plan that you can download from your app store. If you just go to waterforthethirsty.com, there's some links there that you can get the PDF, you can get the Apple Store link, you can get the Android Store link. It's an app that you can download and read along with us, so that when we come together, you can participate in the conversations or just have a Bible reading plan that can take you through the Bible in the year and open up your Christian experience in a way that really nothing else will, except the word itself, because it's the word simply refresher. Doesn't really have any teaching guides or study guides. It's really just you read it through and allow the Spirit to guide and direct you. Until the next time, have a good evening, happy Sabbath, and drink up.
Drink up.
Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink.
This is Water for the Thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty.
Water for the thirsty. Drink up.
Drink up. Hashtag Instagram, Facebook. We all there. Follow us. Tweet us. I have a mic on right now.